Are George Russell's days at Mercedes coming to an end? The English driver's situation is causing quite a stir in Formula One, and recent reports have the potential to completely transform the German team's future. At the same time, Max Verstappen remains the most sought-after figure on the grid, and Mercedes is pulling out all the stops to snatch the four-time world champion from Red Bull. But will Russell end up being the big loser in this whole saga? The scenario is more complex than it initially appears. George Russell has been with Mercedes for 8 seasons, since 2017, developing his entire professional career within the structure and currently watching his contract expire at the end of this season with no definitive offer on the table. And Russell is not the only one facing this delicate situation. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, the young Italian talent who arrived with high expectations to partner Russell, also finds himself without a guaranteed contract for 2026. Coincidence? Certainly not. The events behind the scenes are even more intriguing. Toto Wolff, Mercedes' top executive, shows no discretion in his obsessive pursuit of Max Verstappen. And what about Russell? The British driver is being forced to watch all the action from a privileged position, waiting for a resolution that could determine whether he stays or becomes another expendable player in the ruthless narrative of Formula One. The competitor himself has acknowledged that it is unlikely that his situation will be resolved before the mid-year break, and this reveals a lot about Mercedes' current priorities. However, let's focus on the data that really matters. There is a break clause in Verstappen's contract that has the potential to transform the situation. If the Dutchman is outside the top 3 in the Drivers' Championship at the halfway point of the season, he will be able to leave Red Bull without any major obstacles. And what is the current situation? Max is currently in 4th place, just 18 points ahead of Russell. The calculation is straightforward and relentless. If Verstappen drops a few more places, Mercedes could finally have its golden opportunity to recruit the greatest phenomenon of the current generation. Russell understands the situation perfectly and is aware of what is happening around him. In a recent statement, he was transparent in stating that it is natural for Mercedes to be in talks with Verstappen. Interpreting all this cordiality, he recognizes that he may be offered up as a sacrifice for the 4-time world champion. And note that Russell is not disappointing in any way. 5 podiums in the first half of the season, including a win, results that in any other team would guarantee immediate renewal. But at Mercedes, where only first place matters, that may not be enough. The question that everyone avoids asking, but which remains in the collective consciousness, is this. Would Mercedes be willing to let go of a driver who completely dominates the team, who has developed in that environment, who understands every aspect of how the organization works, just to bet everything on Max Verstappen? The answer appears to be yes, and that says a lot about how this cruel sport works. Now let's examine the possibilities, because they are both fascinating and terrifying. First possibility, Verstappen accepts Mercedes' offer and Russell becomes history. In this situation, Mercedes would form an ideal duo with the 4-time world champion and Kimi Antonelli, investing in the present and the future simultaneously. Russell would need to find a new home, and let's face it, top-tier opportunities are not exactly abundant on the current grid. Second possibility, Verstappen chooses to stay at Red Bull, either out of loyalty or because the Austrian team manages to recover technically. In this circumstance, Russell would likely be re-signed, but always with that unpleasant feeling of having been merely the second choice. And Antonelli, the young Italian, could be sent for another season of improvement or loaned to a partner team. Third possibility, and possibly the most fascinating, Verstappen transfers to Mercedes, but Russell manages to stay with the team, creating one of the most competitive duos in Formula One history. It would be a dream come true for any fan of the sport, but also an administrative nightmare for Toto Wolff, who would have to manage 2 drivers capable of competing for the world title. The big strategic question behind all this movement is simple. Mercedes needs to get back to the top, and Wolff understands that just having a fast car is not enough. You need the right driver at the right time, and Max Verstappen is undoubtedly the right man for the job. Russell may have talent, he may know the team, he may have achieved significant victories, but he is not Max Verstappen. And in the world of Formula One, where fractions of a second make the difference between glory and oblivion, that difference can be decisive. What strikes me most about this whole narrative is Russell's attitude. The driver is being completely professional, stating that he will focus solely on performance and allow situations to resolve themselves naturally. But is that really the case? Isn't he angry inside, watching his home being offered to someone else? Russell's diplomacy may be hiding enormous frustration, and honestly, I would understand perfectly. On the other hand, we need to recognize the harsh reality of Formula One. This is a sport of results, not feelings. Mercedes has no obligations to Russell beyond what it has already compensated him for over the years. If there is a possibility of hiring the best driver in the world, why wouldn't they do it? Business is business, and in Formula One, business is even more business. The situation also reveals something fascinating about the current dynamics of the driver market. Verstappen has become a kind of universal free agent, capable of destabilizing any team on the grid with mere rumors of a possible transfer. Russell, on the other hand, represents a whole generation of talented drivers who could become expendable in the face of the emergence of a super talent. Looking ahead, regardless of what happens with Russell, this situation will define the next few years for Mercedes. If they get Verstappen, they automatically return to title favorites. If they miss this opportunity and, on top of that, lose Russell due to poor management of the situation, they could find themselves in a very delicate position for 2026. The timing is also crucial. Russell has stated that it is unlikely that his situation will be resolved before the summer break, and this creates enormous psychological pressure. Imagine competing in the second half of the championship without knowing if you will have a job next year. This can affect performance, create internal tensions, and generate a toxic environment within the team. Ultimately, we are witnessing yet another chapter in the eternal cruelty of Formula One. A sport where loyalty is worth little, where results are everything, and where a driver can go from hero to expendable overnight. Russell built his entire career at Mercedes, was patient when he was sent to Williams, returned when asked, delivered results when needed, and now may be let go because something better came along. That's what makes Formula One so fascinating, and at the same time so brutal. There are no guarantees, there are no acquired rights. There is only the next race and the next opportunity to prove your worth. Russell knows it, Verstappen knows it, and Mercedes definitely knows it. The question that remains is, who will emerge victorious from this giant chess game that is playing out behind the scenes of the world's greatest motorsport spectacle? What do you think about this whole situation? Does Russell deserve to stay at Mercedes after so many years of dedication, or should the team really bet everything on Max Verstappen? Leave your opinion in the comments, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any news from this driver. Market that is more exciting than ever.